This is going to be really controversial, but stick with me for a minute because I'm going to explain why I believe that the TikTok ban that's being proposed right now in the US Congress could potentially hurt not only Americans, but people all around the world in a very meaningful way, and why this is a reason why you might want to detach from the United States a little bit. So there's been a lot of news in recent weeks about the US Congress essentially trying to ban the social media app TikTok from the United States. It would basically be putting a gun to the Chinese company that owns its head and saying, either sell it or we're going to ban it. I'm going to tell you why that should concern you in a couple of different ways in a moment. Here's the story. Here's the latest news. This is from the New York Times morning briefing that says Republicans plan a U.S. TikTok crackdown. Now, they're very clear to say that Donald Trump, who during his administration had tried to work at this deal where, was it like Walmart was going to buy this or Oracle together, like Walmart and Oracle getting together and buying TikTok. They were going to try and say, hey, sell it to a U.S. company. Now, Donald Trump is saying he still thinks it's a national security threat. That's his response, because people were saying, like, I thought you were against this. Now he's saying, like, yeah, let it stay. He's saying, well, it would make young people go crazy. I'm going to come back to why this is a freedom issue in a moment and why this should concern you. TikTok aside, kind of the greater cultural issue should concern you. I'm also going to talk about the economics and why that's important. But here's the story. House Republicans plan to vote on legislation that would force the Chinese owners of TikTok to divest or be barred in the U.S., even after Donald Trump came out strongly against banning the platform. We must ensure the Chinese government cannot weaponize TikTok against American users and our government through data collection and propaganda, said the House Majority Leader, Representative Steve Scalise. The bill is one of several efforts of the past year aimed at curtailing TikTok concerns that its parent company's relationship with Beijing poses risks to national security. Now, the first thing that comes to my mind is Jim Rogers, the legendary investor, came and spoke last year at Nomad Capitalist Live, our annual event, nomadcapitalist.com/live. Check it out. It's coming this September. He said, listen, I'm an American. He's still a U.S. citizen, even though he lives in Asia. He said, there's places that I can't invest. I can't invest in places where they're recovering from a war and they need capital. I can't invest in countries that the U.S. doesn't like. I can't invest even in certain stocks. China Mobile, for example. You can't invest there through a U.S. broker or if you're a U.S. person. You're being deprived opportunities. You know, I'm a pretty libertarian guy. I think people should be able to choose what they want to do. I don't know what Steve Scalise has done for you recently. As Bill Burr would say, he ain't putting a sandwich on your table. He's just there creating more laws, getting in your way. You're a citizen of his country. What are you getting from Steve Scalise? Why can't you invest where you want to invest? But that's what's happening. And so we'll have to see what is going to come of this. But first things first, to the extent that there are companies in China and other countries that are public, Americans have fewer investment opportunities. And you can say, hey, listen, but that's China, that's acceptable. But you just extrapolate that. I mean, it as Jim Rogers says, it happens in a number of different situations. So you can say, hey, I don't like China. I wouldn't invest in China. Great. Would you invest over here? Wouldn't you invest over here? The government, through both SEC regulation and all kinds of other policies, makes it difficult for Americans to invest in places all around the world. This is why I believe being a citizen of and being a tax resident of a big country, especially one that's becoming a little bit less relevant every year, and they don't like it, they're going to lash out, that's going to be a risk, and I'm going to tell you why. But first, Steve Scalise, the man not putting a sandwich on your table. He and other politicians, I don't know if him in particular, but a bunch of politicians have been mentioned because TikTok went to their U.S. users and said, hey, call your congressman. Now, you would think if you listen to all these politicians, they want to get at the vote. They want you to, we believe in democracy, right? We've got a system that serves we're not like China where we just, authoritarian. We actually want to hear from the people. What happened? TikTok said, call your representatives. The representatives, the politicians, got, quote unquote, enraged in some cases by calls from their constituents. Many representatives literally shut off their phone lines because they were getting inundated by calls from their own constituents, their own citizens. Does this not kind of make a mockery of in our country, that Nomad guy, he's out in some far-flung hellholes. It's the third world. You don't have any rights. Your people aren't representing you over there. You're calling your politicians and they're enraged that you're calling them out. Dare you call us? We're going to turn off the phone. They don't care about you. It's all smoke and mirrors. Now, let's get down to the economics. If you make money from TikTok, obviously that's an issue. Now, you don't have to live in the US for this to be an issue. If your content market is the US, then, you know, people in the US can't see your content, you're gonna make less money. You can't sell your stuff on TikTok Shop. Listen, I'm not in TikTok, I don't know TikTok. What I do know is people are gonna lose money. I think people should have freedom, and I'm gonna tell you about that in a minute. But if you're making money from there, even if you're not American, if your audience is in the US. Now, this is one reason why in my business, Nomad Capitalist, we help clients from all around the world. In the very early days, it was US, UK, Australia. We still love those folks. I like talking. I can talk very easily to an American that kind of shares my views. It's a good time. My greater concern is, why would you want to have all your audience or all your clientele be in one country? Because something like this could happen. And so this could apply to YouTube content creators. We don't get money. We don't sell ads on our channel. We don't monetize our channel. We get money because people see this and they say, all right, I got $1 million or $10 million or $100 million. I want to become a client. I want to lower my taxes. That's what you do. You go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We do this and we educate people, and a certain number of people want to work with us. But if you're a YouTube creator, the US government not so long ago said, oh, you know what, we're going to start taxing that monetization. Not certain types of ads, but like direct YouTube monetization, we're going to tax that. And if you live in a place we don't like for tax purposes, we're going to charge you more. And suddenly, if you've got a bunch of your audience from the US, now you're making less money. You don't live in the US, you just happen to speak in English, and there's enough Americans. Why does the US government take a piece? Well, here's the next step worse. The next step further is the US is just going to shut you down from making money. A big chunk of your audience is just going to go away. They can't buy your stuff on TikTok Shop. And if you're an American, then you get a double whammy. You can't access a thing that you like. You can't, run your own content creation. So the lesson here is the government can shut you down. And I think people should realize, I'm the goody two-shoes of the offshore world. I'm going to tell you what you should realize in a minute, but first let me tell you, I am the goody two-shoes of the offshore world. We do background checks on people. We deal with people who are upstanding citizens. If people call us trying to do squirrely stuff, out you go. We don't tolerate that. And I think that's the way it should be. But even when you conduct yourself in that way, you could still get hit by the long arm of the US Congress, or maybe someone else's Congress, even if you've done everything right. And so we can have all these thoughts about TikTok and why it's not good, but if you're making your money from TikTok, or whatever the next thing is, you could be the most ethical person. You don't have to agree with China. You're just on TikTok. Because I remember I heard about TikTok 5 years ago. Gary Vee, get on TikTok. It's so easy to get a following. And I guess we've got a Nomad Capitalist TikTok. I don't know. But why does the government, especially if it's not your government, let's say you live in the UK, why does this get to affect your life? Why do they get to tax you? Why do they get to shut down your audience? That's a pretty scary thing, that even if you're a thoroughly legitimate business person, you can be shut down. Your income can be taken away from you with a stroke of a pen, because Biden said he's going to sign this if it comes to his desk. There's this kind of whole bipartisanship in terms of shutting down people's options. Your country, if you're an American, could just cancel your income. It's gone. You can't use it anymore. Now, this is one reason why I think having residence permits and citizenship is important. I'm not saying if you make a little bit of money from TikTok, you should move overseas and renounce your citizenship. But to Jim Ryder's point, Americans do have a lot more regulations on them that other countries don't have. Now, if just people in the United States can't download TikTok, like that's, wherever you are, it's not going to solve that problem. But I think being diversified, not only in terms of who you talk to and who you get money from, what platforms you're on, obviously, Facebook or Instagram, any of these platforms, if you create content, can shut you down any time. But if you had a place to move to keep your business running, whether it's TikTok or certain kinds of investing or whatever it is, you want to be careful that you follow all the laws. Obviously, things like U.S. sanctions apply to anyone who wants to do business within the U.S. or in U.S. dollars. Make sure you're compliant. But at a certain point, it might be better to be a citizen of some other country. And when people ask me why I gave up U.S. citizenship, it wasn't because of TikTok, because I don't know if TikTok was around when I gave it up. But I just kind of saw the writing on the wall. There were so many things going in the wrong direction. There were so many things that were already frustrating. And I'm not saying giving up your citizenship is the answer, but certainly being aware of how much power one government has. That's a challenge. Don't trust one platform. Don't trust one country. They can all cancel you. And again, listen, nothing wrong with having a second passport. But what if there comes a time when the U.S. says, you know what, you're not allowed to get another passport anymore. If you have one, you can keep it, but you can't get a new one. I don't know what form that would take. I certainly know that In my mind, there's nothing wrong with getting a second passport. In the rest of the world, there's nothing wrong with getting a second passport. A couple countries don't allow dual citizenship, but you can get the passport, nothing wrong with it. What if the U.S. doesn't want people to leave at some point? Ron Paul, maybe we're getting a little conspiratorial here, but he said, walls are built to keep people in just as much as they're built to keep people out. If things get bad enough, things keep trending in the wrong direction, I don't want my business to be reliant on only helping Americans get second passports. I love having American clientele, but I'm not going to go down with the ship. I'm just going to be here. You'll be watching me saying, hey, I'm sorry. I told you, you didn't listen. You didn't do it fast enough. And all right, I'll be helping all the Brazilians and the Turks and the Vietnamese get their passports. So the same message applies to you. You don't want one country, especially your own, to take away your source of income. I think this is also a bad message for those who want free markets, and this is the part where it gets controversial. I was having a conversation with a few friends about this. Listen, I get it. You can think that what China does is wrong, and how they conduct themselves is wrong. I happen to think that, whether you like it or not, they're going to play a larger role going forward. I think that there's probably some Chinese stocks right now that are at a deep discount and that will come back in the coming year. And I feel that because I've done it myself. But I think that, more than that, it's important to see, and I think this is what Trump drew attention to when he talked about a lot of killers, what he said. You think that your government is so perfect. You think they don't do any of the same stuff? In this article, New York Times, they talk about Chinese propaganda. And I ask people, okay, what's the propaganda? Oh, they're showing people stuff that's anti-American. I said, maybe anti-American is something people need to see. Maybe it's like, hey, your government's doing some nasty stuff. Maybe it's, hey, there's better opportunities over, somewhere else. I'm sure somebody would call me anti-American propaganda. I don't hate the country. I just think they do a lot of stupid stuff. I think if you're a citizen, you give up a number of freedoms, but they tell you you've got freedom, so it's okay. I'm not saying the U.S. is the worst country in the world. I own U.S. stocks. I have friends who live in the U.S. I have a few connections with the U.S., but they concern me with some of the stuff that they're doing. I really think that when you're on top as the number one and only for so long, and then you start to have multipolarity, you're going to make sure that you defend the hegemony as long as possible. And so the U.S., you think they don't put up propaganda? You think what you hear in the news is the most fair and balanced and wonderful thing? I'm not trying to make this political, but this mine is better approach. Now you can say, listen, we like U.S. values, they can like their Chinese values, but I don't think they're quite as far apart as you think they are, quite frankly. I'm not saying that they're super close, but I'm saying they're probably a little bit closer than you'd actually think sitting at home in the U.S. and watching the news. I think that no mega government's good. I want to be with small countries. I'm a citizen of among 4 other places, St. Lucia in the Caribbean. Does St. Lucia want to tell me where I should invest? No, they don't care. They couldn't do it, and they don't want to do it. They want to be peaceful. They want to get along with everybody. I'm not a big fan of any of these big country governments. Could the UK do something like this? Not as effectively, but it still might hurt a little bit. I see this as a slippery slope. American business might benefit now if they're able to get a fire sale on this app. I think that sets a pretty bad tone, that if you do business somewhere else, we can just take it. You're like kind of what people accuse Russia of doing at that point, where we're just going to expropriate people's businesses. That's one thing people say in the comments, why they don't want to go offshore. They think that they're going to be expropriated. You can have your stuff taken in the United States. And it's happened. Even people who have a few gold coins in a safe deposit box, they just come and take it. Maybe you get it back, maybe you don't. It's already happening in the US. It happens in Western countries. And so the idea that that's the message your country sends to the world, I get it. Some people are going to pump their chests and they're going to say, well, we're the best and we have a freedom, and what they're doing over there in China, they're doing some nasty stuff. That's great. The rest of the world, including your so-called allies in places like Europe, are going to see it as a bald-faced attempt just to take people's stuff. You think that only the countries that you don't like are going to stop investing because they're going to be afraid maybe they'll be on the wrong side? Do you know what happened during the Russia-Ukraine war? There was talk of secondary sanctions. Hey, we may not have a problem with you, but if you buy anything from Russia, we'll also go after you. We're going to sanction India. We're going to go after everybody. And they're like, yeah, we really can't get away with that. It's going to backfire. Your country it's losing a little bit of power every year. I think that bothers a lot of folks. It's pretty easy to bury your head in the sand and not realize that there's a lot of countries around the world that are emerging, and that China's doing a lot more business in Southeast Asia, which is much faster growing and whatever. But I think that if you want people to invest in your country, it's going to have a ripple effect. I looked at what happened in Florida. Oh, people, Chinese can't buy land. You're telling me out of 1.4 almost billion people, there's nobody good you'd want to come to your country and own some land? Okay, fine. Maybe you say, all right, nobody can own huge farms or take all the water or something like that. But why are we singling out specific countries as if everyone there is terrible? I thought the U.S. was a place where people who wanted to be free could come. It's sending the wrong message. And it's not the only country. Canada's done this with its real estate bans, New Zealand. You can call it simple populism, taking care of your own people, that's fine. But it's hard to do that and send a message that the country's open for business. We're open for business if we like you, and if you don't do this, and if you don't do that. I think it's a slippery slope. And quite frankly, the idea that they're putting out anti-American propaganda. What happened to freedom of speech? What happened to we as more libertarian-minded people thinking, people should be able to decide for themselves. Show them all perspectives. Show them all opinions. Let them decide. By the way, that's what we do at Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up this September. It's in Kuala Lumpur again. Hundreds of folks from all around the world who think the way you do. Listen, we may not agree on everything. And I may not agree with every speaker, every panelist and everything. We've got about 40 different speakers and panelists, from the CEO of AirAsia, who's doing a great business, flying pretty much everywhere but Western countries. Took $1 million, turned it into billions of dollars. He's going to tell you his story of doing that in Malaysia. Nigel Farage is there. We've got all sorts of people. And you know what? You may not agree with all of them. I may not agree with everything that they say. But it's open thought and what I believe a nomad capitalist should hear. It's 4 days of information about stuff you need to know. Because I guarantee you, we're going to have about half a dozen emerging markets experts, some of them focused in Asia, Central Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia. You're going to hear from them what's really happening on the ground, where their business is really coming from. I think if you believe that the Western markets could just throw their weight around and that's how you're investing, you're not going to make as much money as you could. If you don't have a second residence, and really, in this case, a passport, that you can say when your business that has clients somewhere else is going to be taken away, you need options. And we're going to be talking about those. Obviously, we help our clients. If you want a residence or citizenship, you can go and you can work with us directly and we can talk about this with you. If you want to learn about the opportunities, if you want to learn how the world is working, not from a local perspective, from a truly global perspective with people from 3 or 4 dozen, if not more, different countries, go to nomadcapitalist.com/live, get your tickets to our annual 4-day event. It's going to be great. And you'll be hearing more stuff like this. We don't have to agree on everything, but I happen to think in the Western world, a slippery slope. And it's, even if you don't care about China, it will come back to affect people in your country and the people that you like from other countries. It is going to cost them money. That's going to create a reputational risk, and that's going to begin a continued deceleration of investment where you live. That's not a good thing, but I think it's probably going to happen whether I like it or not.